It was an ordinary quiet evening. It was getting dark outside. Birdsong sounds. Everything looks like an ordinary day. It so happened that the guy stayed late at the gazebo. He said goodbye to all his friends and wanted to go to rest. But at some point, he heard a suspicious sound. It turns out that some girl really wants to talk to him. She doesn't know him, but for some reason, she really wants to say something. The stranger is obviously afraid of something and behaves as if she is trying to escape. She thinks if she's lucky, he'll listen to her and be able to help. The thing is, the lady is really running away and wants to find, or rather ask to be helped, to hide herself. She has no other option, because the one who frightened her is too close. She doesn't know what to say in such cases. The main thing is that the guy doesn't pass by. At this point, she had forgotten all the words and was very confused. The girl could only ask for him to take her somewhere and did not explain anything in detail. The guy was surprised and asked if she knew who he was. He was usually never approached by locals. Anyway, it's very good that he stopped and gave her a chance to explain. He saw her scared eyes and he did the right thing. She felt much better and calmer right away. But still, it doesn't mean anything. Meanwhile, he asks if he understood correctly that she ran up to ask to stay here. While he has no reason to trust and listen to some stranger, it often happens that villains run up to him and try to deceive him in a similar manner. Here, instead of asking questions and dealing with the situation, he looked at her with a strange look and asked her how good she was. It's a very strange question and it's unclear what he means by that. The main thing is that the girl did not regret that she approached him and hoped that he could help. There is a risk that from one danger, she ran away to the second one. The lady noticed at once that something was wrong here and tried to indicate that she was not at all as he saw her. After that, so as not to make him nervous in any way, the girl said that she could be for him, whatever he wanted. The guy smiled and started talking quietly about some toy, hinting that there was or could be something in common between them. Then, instead of offering to come inside or rest, he starts hinting again. Supposedly, she should fulfill his some expectations and not disappoint him while he's being kind. It doesn't sound very comforting, but still. It's better than continuing to run around late at night looking for an unresponsive place. Sure, it's not the kindest rescuer she expected to see, but it's better than someone who just destroyed her entire family and chased her for hours on end. At some point, she hears a familiar voice and realizes that these people have arrived. They are talking amongst themselves and asking if anyone has found the missing item. Their chief suggested splitting up and going to different tables. It would be much quicker and more correct. One would hope that everything would be okay, and if they came for her, that this guy would be able to protect her and leave her safe and sound. As suddenly, the guy starts saying some strange words and acting like he's their master, and he knows who they're looking for. His smile starting to get more and more alarming. The girl pretended she didn't understand. She grabbed his hand and started begging him not to let them take her. She promised she would do anything he said. The main thing was to stay safe. Again, instead of promising her safety, he started talking about some counselor who told him to create problems, and after that asked how he could refuse such a frightened girl, whom but for him, no one could protect. According to him, he wants only one thing, namely, her agreement that from now on, he becomes her master, and if he asks for anything, she will be obliged to fulfill any request. The girl did not even have time to answer. He understood everything at once and got down to business. The master got up and turned to those guys. They got right up close and saw what they were looking for. These guys even know her name, and it turns out the girl's name is Xenia. But that's not all. It turns out that these guys know him too. They greeted him like a king, and at that moment, Xenia could not believe her eyes. She did not know that she ran up to the king. She immediately understood why he behaves like that, as if he can do anything. But that wasn't the most interesting part. She heard someone call him a tyrant after they said the king's name. It turned out that it wasn't just an insult. The king himself called himself just that. Anyway, since he's already agreed to help, the girl is calm and decides she'll think about it later, as suddenly, the king turns to these men and allows them to take her away. They immediately jumped on her and started treating her as if she owed them something. And at that moment, the king smiles as if he'd forgotten his promise to her. Xenia begins to scream with all her might and ask that no one touches her. The girl can barely contain herself not to cry because everything is too unfair. She does not understand why she deserves such a terrible attitude to herself. As soon as the guy started to touch the lady, the king came up to them and for some reason started to stop him as if he changed his mind and remembered his words. He comes even closer and says he has one request: to tell the prince that he is now Zinnia's master, and from now on, no one has the right to take her away from him. After that, he grabbed him even tighter and said that there was probably no point, since there was nothing stopping him from taking Zinnia back to his place and not saying anything to anyone. It was very unexpected and a bit strange. First, he lets them take her away, and then afterwards he punishes them and says he changed his mind. Now I see why they call him a tyrant. You never know what you can expect from him and what he is capable of doing. Zinnia doesn't even know how to react to it. On the one hand, he saved her and didn't let them steal her, but on the other hand, she got to a real tyrant and there's no telling what he will demand in return. She only realized one thing: he likes to scare and do anything that harms other people. It's kind of fun for him. This is evidenced by his strange smile every time he sees frightened faces, especially those who deserve it. In the meantime, he turned around and started walking towards her. The girl was very tense because nothing was clear yet. The only thing she had managed to realize was that it was impossible to upset and refuse this man. The guy started looking at her with a look as if he wanted to both destroy her and get to know her a little better at the same time. The girl continues to remain silent and watches his every move. The guy starts to gradually touch her face and watch how she reacts to it. He doesn't hide that he really likes to feel like a master to such an interesting girl like her, though he doesn't know anything, but it's even for the better. At one point, they'd gotten so close to each other that it didn't quite look like the help she'd expected to get anymore. At the very last moment, Zinnia realizes that she herself agreed to it and ran up to this man. Now she will have to be responsible for her actions and do everything he asks, even if something is strongly disliked. As suddenly, the king kisses her and hands her over. Of course, no one asked anyone whether she was against it or not. He thought he was the master, and now she no longer has the right to refuse or hint that this was unnecessary. It lasted so long that Zinnia had already forgotten how it had started. She didn't know how to react because in the last few minutes, too much had happened. After that, he starts saying he's too boring and soon will try to make it right. Then he decided to calm her down and even complimented her on how good she was for not getting scared and pushing him away like other girls usually do. No one noticed, but a butler came up. He asked what was going on here and said he had heard some strange rumors. He wasn't holding back and had come to find out everything. He began to hint that this was all wrong, and it would be much better if everything happened inside the house. This situation could be seen by strangers, and it was possible that tomorrow there would be new rumors all over the kingdom. The guy replied that there was nothing wrong with that, because he was never interested in other people's opinions. The assistant is getting very angry. It has always been important for him to work on the Lord's reputation, and he keeps ruining it and adding to his problems. The king gently hinted that it was only his personal business, which was nobody's business, and if he wanted to, he would talk to one of his aides about it. But for now, he had no such desire. The assistant understood everything and did not even resist, although usually he constantly resents and tries to change the gentleman's mind. Zinnia has already somewhat realized what happened and decided that at least she is very grateful to this man, no matter how tyrant he was. And of course, sooner or later, she must take revenge on those for whom she lost her family. The next day came. The night passed quite calmly. The girl was able to rest. She was not worried at all and even already feels like home. Most importantly, it is safe here, at least for now. For starters, without getting out of bed, Zinnia opened a book and began to study this kingdom. It turns out that it is very prosperous and powerful. It is one of the best on the mainland, and yet she cannot stop thinking about who she now lives in the same house and what to expect from him. When he starts calling himself Mr., it gets very scary. But at the same time, the girl can't even hint that she doesn't like it, very curious how long she'll stay here, and if he'll let her leave here at all. Zinnia is not going to stand in one place and plans to take revenge on her enemy. This is the only goal in her life, and if she does not do it, she will never forgive herself. Whether she has it or not depends only on whether the king will support it and whether the girl will tell about her plan. If he only knew what she was going through, he probably wouldn't have acted like that and would have tried to help right away. Maybe that's her mistake, and the sooner she tells the truth, the sooner things can get better. In fact, she no longer expects him to help her, for the king has done enough. And if he were to help with revenge, it would be something impossible. For now, she needs to rely only on herself and not think that anyone can help. It's only her business. The main thing is that no one interferes in this and does not try to stop her. In the meantime, she had already cleaned herself up and decided to leave the room. The girl opens the door and sees in front of her the same assistant who approached them last night. She didn't even have time to say a single word to him, so he immediately started asking a lot of questions. It seemed that all this time he was eavesdropping and thus trying to distract her attention. After he had succeeded and saw that she didn't have any questions or stares, he informed her that His Majesty wanted to see her. He said that he would escort her to the study and asked her to hurry up. The girl thought that this would be a very important conversation, so this opportunity should be made the most of. As usual, the king also woke up early in the morning. But for some reason, despite the fact that he doesn't have much to do, he really likes to be here and just sit in silence or, for example, think about some plans. The assistant knocked and said he was here with Xenia. The guy was immediately excited but pretended it was no big deal. He let them in and looked as if they were distracting him a lot. The girl went up to him and he started talking about some animals that should always be near the owner and wait for him to pet them. It was a hint. Supposedly, Xenia is the same. She understands everything and tries not to upset him, doesn't say anything unnecessary, smiles a little and looks like a grateful person. It turns out she's having none of it. The guy can clearly see that she's nervous and afraid to upset him. The king asked directly if his girlfriend was afraid, and instead of saying it in a calm voice, he said it like he wanted to scare her even more. The lady is sure that if she now says a positive answer, he will destroy her in the same place in the same second, while it is possible that if she says a negative answer, he will do it anyway. Xenia thought that she does not need to think long, because if she stalls, it will only get worse. She doesn't know how to approach him yet, though he probably doesn't exist. You have to be silent in his presence and listen to orders. It's so messed up it's unclear what he wants, whether he likes to call himself master or maybe he has an agenda. As soon as the girl thought of it, he gave no warning, came very close, picked her up in his arms and started walking somewhere. The lady tried her best not to scream and hint that she didn't like it. At least it would have been nice to at least warn her, instead of picking her up and taking her away like that. It turned out it was bath time, and for some reason, he decided to take her with him. Despite this, Xenia remained silent and began to hope with all her might that he just wanted her around and nothing more. Really wondering what this guy is up to and how many days it will take to get used to a character as complex as he is. On the one hand, he does allow himself too much. But on the other hand, if you consider this fact that he is called a real tyrant, he hasn't done anything wrong yet. Things could be much worse and more dangerous. So the fact that she's still alive means it's more or less safe, and it's too early to think bad things are happening. It turns out that all the most interesting things are just starting now. He was suddenly curious to ask what positions she could or wanted to fulfill. Xenia immediately blushed. She did not expect such a question and does not understand what it means, what posts he is referring to. Afterward, he said he had one wish. She should help him to amuse himself and do her best to keep him satisfied and not regret having saved him to let him stay. Of course, she felt very uncomfortable at once, for if he became more insistent, things would not be as calm and easy as they were now, and it was only her first day in this house. At some point, she couldn't stand it and decided to tell the truth. It's to make him realize that she's not what he thinks she is, and that she was really just a princess who refused the monster's offer, for which he destroyed the kingdom and her whole family. It was the worst day of her life. Worse than that, nothing can be thought of. The girl lost her family, and now she has nothing to continue her life for. There is only revenge on her enemy, and that's it. After that, she asked if, in his opinion, she could really treat well a man who could only be called a monster. The girl made it clear that he was very mistaken and did not know how things really were. It is very interesting how he will react to this, and whether he will change his attitude towards Xenia. Now he is silent and seems to be thinking about something. I hope that he will change his opinion a little and realize that she is not like everyone else and deserves a normal attitude towards herself. In order not to make him sad with a huge amount of information, the girl changed the topic and started talking about nothing. The main thing was that he should draw conclusions and there should be some changes. Only in this way, her safety could be guaranteed. The moment he stopped talking, the girl mistook him for thinking. For in fact, all this time he had been looking at her and wanting to stop thinking about problems. He admitted that now was not the right time for that. The guy even forgot half of the words and focused only on enjoying this moment, and luckily, Xenia realizes that she stopped talking and changed, that she started talking about her problems at the wrong time. She wanted to make amends and said she did it all just so he wouldn't get mad. At this point, It became very difficult for her, because at first she is afraid of him. After just a second, she starts to admire his amazing character. She starts to be afraid again, and then gradually, she starts to fall in love. It is as if she sees in him a very kind man who hides behind the mask of a tyrant and wants to see the real man as he really is, if, of course, it is possible at all. There are people who are very much and forever in the role, and unfortunately, cannot get out of it, even if you want to. Perhaps he is one of those who forgot that he was a completely different person at all. The king starts touching her hair and even gave her a few compliments. He tries to calm Xenia down and make her stop expecting some kind of trickery. The girl thinks that nothing can be seen, but in fact, her excitement can be seen even in the next room. She is so nervous that she can no longer hide her emotions. She becomes so embarrassed that at some point she stops controlling herself and starts to act first, when suddenly the guy looks at her with surprised eyes and for some reason starts to distance himself, although he was doing the same thing. Xenia doesn't understand anything, and once again when she wanted to do the best, but it turned out only worse. Everything is too strange and incomprehensible. He starts pushing her and submerges her, as if he wants to punish her for something. Did she really do something wrong and this is some kind of punishment? At least, that's what it looks like. At some point, he gives her a chance to breathe, and just a few minutes later, the girl realizes that she was wrong again. She didn't even realize that, in fact, it's not what it looks like from the outside. He starts kissing her again and makes her unable to say a single word. The girl finally decides that she will not do anything herself, because this will only make her more nervous. The king started smiling again, as if he got what he wanted, and now, there was no reason to be angry about anything. He didn't explain anything, and made it clear that it was better not to ask questions now. Of course, Xenia would like to ask something, but perhaps it would be better to forget about it and never bring it up. She no longer wanted to feel the fear she had just experienced, thinking that he was angry and might punish her severely. She just looks at him and sees a contented man like she's never seen him before. Very curious how long that will last and if he'll be like that in a few hours at least. Now they're looking at each other, and most likely, he'll just ask her to go back to her room. Xenia wants to talk and is trying to hint about it as best and gently as possible. It's like the girl can't take it anymore, like she's about to tell him what she really thinks. The only thing stopping her is that he's called a tyrant and she's never seen him as a violent man before and really doesn't even want to imagine. Some are even afraid to pass near his house, because when the guy is in a bad mood, he can see someone and without reason to punish, not to mention that someone suddenly begins to express complaints to him. This man is so mysterious that even when he smiles, it doesn't always mean he's in a good mood. More often than not, it's very deceptive and doesn't mean anything. His usual and sinister smile has almost no distinction whatsoever. And that just makes it harder. Xenia doesn't even know what to come up with that would be safe and at the same time be a good option. The moment there was an awkward silence, she took the opportunity to repeat again all the very words she had spoken at the beginning of the. She was very curious to see his reaction because now he was focused and nothing could distract him, when suddenly he pushed her to the side of the bed and asked her not to say another word. The guy started smiling again, as if everything that had gone before wasn't enough for him. He doesn't even try to get into the problem or express any sympathy. None of it is even close to that. The girl asked if he wanted to talk about it, and in response, he ignored her as usual. She again thought he would listen to her, but it seems this man absolutely doesn't care about anything that isn't for his benefit or amusement. He starts kissing her again and says he wants to spend the day together until morning. Does he really like her so much that he can't let her go? In fact, Xenia is already tired. She's afraid to ask for anything and has to endure it, even if she doesn't want to. She's locked up with a tyrant who it's better not to upset. He doesn't even pay attention to her screams, reactions, and everything else. Does he really think he is the master? And her, a creature who has no opinion of her own? He even allowed himself to say that he wasn't really interested in anyone's problems, except his own. Of course, he didn't care what the girl thought, even after she was in a terrible situation now all alone. The guy asked what it was like to spend time with a man who doesn't care about her at all and can't even support her. The girl would like to answer that she would like to leave, but the answer is that he's the best host and she's willing to put up with it. She got tears, a horrible feeling, and in general a sense of injustice. Of course she really owes him a lot. After all, this man is her savior. But still, he really is too cruel. though the guy probably didn't even show the slightest bit of his cruelty. She really wants to feel like a little girl who has someone to complain to, but unfortunately the only person she can tell that to is the king, who doesn't care about anyone but herself. He tried to wipe away a tear for the sake of propriety and said that there's no going back, which is true, but I'd like to hear something nicer. When he didn't hear the words of gratitude, he got angry, as if he expected a different reaction, which is strange, because Xenia is more hurt than he is right now. At that moment, the girl remembered again that if it wasn't for him, it wasn't a fact that she would be alive. So no matter how much of a tyrant this man was, he deserved to be thanked. She remembered begging him for help, and right after he did, she even forgot to thank him. And now, it was the right time for it. The girl realizes that she will definitely stay here for a long time, and the only way to take revenge on her enemy is to ask the king for it. If Xenia knew for sure that he would agree, she would ask for it right now and would be ready to do anything as a thank you. In the meantime, it was evening. Xenia went to his room as usual to make sure that he would let her go to his room, but this time he asked her to stay and hinted that it would be good to stay until morning. He asked to come closer, which meant that it was about to be the same as it had been this afternoon. In fact, the lady was quite tired. If she only had the option to refuse, she would gladly take it. She had the idea that perhaps if he liked her even more, he might be more likely to help him avenge his enemy. For now, she was a stranger to him. But perhaps in time he could ask anything he wanted, and it would take a little effort to do so. Might take a long time, but it's the safest option. That's all she helped come up with, because asking for it outright would be a mistake. It's a shame she has to do this with a man she has no feelings for, but it's the only way she can stay alive and fulfill her mission. There are no other options she has or will have. He is the strongest and most important person in the whole kingdom. If he doesn't like something, it can be considered that Xenia has big problems. Nothing prevents him to find another girl instead of her and forget about her after a few days. Besides, she doesn't know this man at all. Maybe he'll talk to her for a while longer and order her to leave his house and never come back. Meanwhile, he got bored and wanted the girl to come a little closer. He had that weird smile again, which never fails to freak Xenia out. The guy has no idea how much she wants to leave, but she doesn't do it just because it could be dangerous. If he didn't have so much power and a terrible temper, she would have done it a long time ago and would be somewhere safer. Now the main thing is to make him happy and not to cause him any bad emotions, because her life depends only on him, or rather, his moods. Surprisingly, as soon as she starts to approach, his smile gets bigger and bigger. The guy feels like a master and stops controlling himself. He himself doesn't understand what happens when a girl is around. It's strange. But in the past, when he had other acquaintances, nothing like this happened. This is the first time something like this happens. He feels her special energy and doesn't know what to do with it. It's as if his head goes blank and something like a fog appears. All thoughts go blank, and he wants to be with her only. What's even weirder is that as soon as Xenia gets nervous or afraid of his next moves, it makes him smile even more. He realizes she's feeling a little uncomfortable, but doesn't do anything about it. It seems like the more scared she is and the more the girl feels in danger, the more he likes it. The worst part is that she can't give me a hint, or at least ask me not to do something. It seems to be a desperate situation. A girl all alone in this huge house with this tyrant. Yet he said he would be her master without asking anything. She is very scared to even think about what will happen tomorrow. Or for example, after he realizes that she is not complaining about anything and everything he allows himself, there is nothing wrong with it. She thinks that the more time goes on, the more he'll be convinced that Xenia is fine with everything and won't even think about complaining about anything. Further, when she is very sleepy, she has no right to even hint about it. She must do everything to keep the master happy, even when he does not call her to the office. She must still go over to make sure everything is in order. If there's a situation where he's in a bad mood and she doesn't notice, it'll only get worse. He'll make it her fault and order her to apologize. The guy doesn't hide any of this. He says so and warns you that this is how it's going to be. It's his way of doing things. He doesn't even want to take the time to listen to her opinion and try to adjust to make her comfortable. Originally, he did what she asked, and now he thinks she has to do everything he asks, always and not just once. Xenia has accepted that everything here is absolutely fair and still. It's amazing how she has the patience and strength to hold on. At some point, she had somehow miraculously waited until the Lord was asleep and finally had time to rest and be alone. In peace and quiet, it was exactly what she had been waiting for so long, since the first day she had been here. It's very unusual for her to look at a guy who sleeps and doesn't ask for anything. Xenia is used to being anxious, and now she feels unaccustomed to it. She had a thought that maybe she should get some rest too, though if he woke up first he'd ask how dare she stay in this room or think of something else to say. The girl only closed her eyes and decided to lie down on the pillow for a minute. As the owner immediately woke up, it was as if he sensed and did not let her rest in peace. I wonder if she noticed it. It would be very fair if the girl only closes her eyes and he sees it and starts to resent it. In the meantime, she managed to sleep. It was difficult, but she managed. After such a hard day, she starts to have a terrible dream. She sees a dark sky, feels a terrible energy, and has a feeling of fear. The girl feels safe and doesn't know what to do. She knows the feeling. But in the dream, it was so horrible and realistic that it felt like the end of the world had come, and there was nothing to be done about it. Everyone starts fighting among themselves. She hears the terrible screams of people around her and does not understand whether it is possible to survive here at all. Xenia saw her acquaintances and almost fainted. The worst thing she had to see, her father and mother, was it really? It was the same day that happened a few days ago. It was very much like some memories and very real events. The girl wakes up because they think that everything is real. But in fact, all this has already happened a few days ago. She's still remembering her parents and cannot believe that she will never see them again. She begins to flow tears. Xenia cannot stop them and feels that she is alone again. The girl constantly tries to forget about it and stop thinking. But this dream, as if it haunts her and does not let her start life again. She felt so bad that she forgot about all her problems, didn't care what was going on around her, and wanted to ask that no one should enter this room for at least a few days. But unfortunately, it was impossible. Here recently, she has some responsibilities that under no circumstances cannot be ignored. And if she does not even know what will happen for it. So, she is afraid of making a mistake even more. Now Xenia just decided to stay in bed for some more time, because in such a state, it is better not to go to the Lord. She needs to calm down and try to focus on something else, but not on what she had just seen. Once she was already a little awake, started looking around the room, happened to notice some note. Very curious what it was, and who it was from. It turns out to be an invitation. It says that as soon as she wakes up, she's invited to come to the reception to meet some literature teacher. The girl never realized who wrote the note anyway. It will be clear soon enough. I really wonder what she needs this meeting for. Before this, there wasn't even any talk about it. She doesn't really want to rush into anything, especially a meeting with a stranger that she hasn't prepared for. Xenia goes outside to walk a little and wake up and sees two maids. She immediately decided to approach them to find out something. The thing is, she doesn't quite know where to find the reception room. No one has had time to give her a tour of the grounds yet, so it's better to ask someone straight away to avoid getting lost. She starts talking to these girls, but they ignore and pretend as if they didn't hear anything. Xenia comes closer and repeats it again, but nothing changes. In fact, everything is clear here. The girl already knows that she doesn't have the best reputation here, and no one will want to communicate with someone like her. When suddenly she hears a man's voice, and after that some kind of compliment. Xenia did not even hear what this guy said. She saw him and was immediately confused. He forgave that she would do it and how he could help. The girl said hello and explained that she was just trying to find her way to the reception area where she had an appointment. The guy said that actually if she planned to walk, it would be a bit far. So if she was willing, he could take her there, and at that time they could have a little chat. No one thought about what the king would think about it. Xenia only wanted to be on time and not late. She said she was very grateful and didn't know what she would have done if it wasn't for him. The guy smiled and said it was okay. He just had some free time, and it would be nice for him to spend it with such a beautiful girl. He started saying a lot of compliments again and made it clear that he liked her. But the main thing was not to let the king know about it. Otherwise, it would be a problem for the two of them. The girl has always known that she is very beautiful, and sometimes she is very glad that appearance helps her in such situations. When you really need someone's help, people just come up themselves and offer to do something. In fact, she is not trying to look for some hidden meanings and reasons why he approached her. She needs to meet him now, and she will think about everything else later when she has time. Of course, after these, her mood immediately lifted, and it turns out that the morning started off quite well. At least she already has one person she knows who treats her well. On the way, the boy began to ask if Xenia knew anything about this kingdom. She told him that she had read a little literature and in general knew the history of this place. The boy said that this was very commendable and not bad, because the girl had only recently arrived here, but had already managed to learn so much. At one point, a door opens. Out comes the king's aide, who is clearly unhappy that they are standing in this place and talking when the king doesn't know about it. After that, the guy begins to talk and explain the situation, but for some reason, he begins to call himself a teacher and her student. Is he really the teacher to whom Xenia rushes? If so, it is just an amazing coincidence, although the girl does not guess anything yet. As suddenly, right after these words, he starts looking at Xenia and realizes that this is the right moment to introduce himself and say that he is her literature teacher. In fact, she really didn't expect it. It felt like the teacher was supposed to be a woman, but since it was, it's even better since they already have a good relationship between them. You can read that the first acquaintance went well, even better than they thought. Now the teacher will give the first lecture that kindness, obedience, and trust are not needed in this palace. It sounds strange, but Xenia is no longer surprised by anything. It turns out that he just goes and talks about how it is accepted to behave here. Here, obviously, you cannot trust anyone, and you need to think only about yourself. There have been many cases when people try to help someone and themselves suffered even more, and in the end were guilty. This is one of the most important rules to remember. There is no justice and kindness here as there usually is in other kingdoms, and here things are a little different, or rather, completely different. The teacher said that it was not really a lecture, but rather a briefing, without which it would be pointless to start the first lesson. Since he had already said everything he wanted to say, Xenia was free to go. The next lesson would be tomorrow morning. Just as they were about to say goodbye and go about their business, an assistant came up and said that Mr. William was an excellent teacher, and that if the girl attended every lesson, she would learn a great deal and would be grateful for the instruction someday. After that, they said goodbye and wished each other a good day. The teacher and the assistant left together, and Xenia was left alone. The girl thought that perhaps the teacher is really right. In this palace, there is no room for kindness and trust. Here, everyone acts in such a way to get profit first of all. For themselves, unfortunately, the actual strength of Xenia very much limits her. It is very difficult for her to move on her own, respectively. To survive and stay here even a little, we'll have to make a plan for the future and find some allies. To concentrate on this, she went to her room, found some books, and started to write something down, when suddenly there was a knock on the door, and everything became clear at once. It's definitely a king, but why he's holding a sword, I don't even want to speculate. Maybe it has nothing to do with what he came for. At least I hope so. Xenia said hello to him and asked what she could do to help. She thought that I wanted to talk to him again. And maybe not only that, he usually came at this time. But today, it was different. He started to look at her like he was really offended or he wanted to ask her something. He was obviously not happy about something, and now there was going to be some important conversation. The girl begins to worry. She is very confused and afraid to say even his name. She does not know what to do, because she has never seen him so angry. If he is planning to do something bad or hurt her, the king will not change his mind. You just have to accept it. If only she could know what he didn't like. Things would be a lot easier. But he just starts yelling and doesn't explain what the problem is. But that's not the worst of it. The king said that if he destroys her, everyone will be better off, and the sooner he does it, the sooner he'll be happy. Xenia sincerely does not understand what she did wrong, because according to him, still nothing is clear. She tries to remember something, but really without a clue where she could have made such a serious mistake that he suddenly wants to get rid of her. It turns out that if she doesn't think of something now and can't fix the situation, she could be dead in just a few minutes. Usually when a king wants something, he rarely does otherwise and gets his way no matter what. She suddenly says that if we really for happiness is not enough only her death, she agrees to it because he is the master, and for his sake she is ready for everything. At least the girl said so. We can only hope that this is part of the plan and not her real words. The king starts to smile because he doesn't believe that she would actually do it, or rather agree to this crazy idea, because so far he hasn't even said what the reason is or what she is guilty of. He just yelled and said he wants to do it. In response, Xenia reminded him that since he had become her master, she would never judge his decision and was obligated to make any idea or desire a reality. At this point, the guy wondered if he needed it at all. It's very pleasant and comfortable to spend time with her. The girl does everything he says and even agrees to it. He has no reason to lose her, especially since she really hasn't done anything wrong. He doesn't understand why she's so quick, probably agrees to it. Though maybe it's just some kind of test that every person goes through that they're going to trust. It turns out it's very simple. Zanaya is sure it's a manipulation and a test she has to pass. You have to say the right words and say with a sovereign face that she will accept any decision he makes. The king starts to look at her as if he is even more interested in this girl. She does not stop surprising him, though it is possible that he just starts to fall in love with her and cannot admit it even to himself. He does not manage to be cruel to her, though with the others he behaves as usual, constantly offends, punishes, and sometimes even for nothing. It turns out the point is that the king was told that the girl had some kind of relationship before him, and of course he didn't like it. Though does he really think that in so many years she wouldn't have experience with anyone, so he wouldn't be mad? She even offered to work something out and said she'd be happy to fix the situation. The girl realizes that the situation was not avoidable, and now she must first calm the king and promise anything, as long as he does not punish her. And of course, you need to find out who tells him such news. During these days, in addition to the basic training of the culture of the kingdom, the girl collected information about the Tyrant. She learned a lot of new things, and once again, convinced that he is a real tyrant. It is believed that if a person has never seen him in a bad mood, and even more did not suffer from him, this person is a real lucky man. As suddenly, the guy drops the sword, which means he's willing to make concessions and keep his life. Did he really like her? Because in any other situation, had long ago done what he came for. It turns out that everything is much simpler. At the moment when the girl studied information about him, she learned that when the king sees that a person is not afraid of death and is ready to admit his guilt, he immediately lost the strength and desire to do it. And when a person is afraid and begs for forgiveness, everything works the other way around. Literally in the same second, he comes close again, touches her voice and says, she's very lucky. He doesn't know why yet, but something seems to keep him from hurting her. It's strange that he doesn't see the real reason and doesn't feel that it's all just a crush. He looks at her with those eyes, as if she's the one he's been waiting for all his life, but he can't admit it to her, or to himself yet. It turns out that Zanaya has once again convinced herself that the king's moods change so quickly that at first he can hate her and come into the room with a ball, and just a few minutes later, he can't resist kissing her. The lady is still not used to it. It's very hard of her to be afraid of someone at first, and then kiss and smile sweetly in return. The guy is a very unpredictable person, but since this situation has happened, she will have to be patient and accept that it is better than that day to die in the street. Meanwhile, Zanaya asked for a few minutes and said that she had to go to the bathroom. He at once forbade her to leave, took her by the arm, and ordered her to stay here. It would be unbearable for him to be without her for a few minutes and wait for her to finally return. The lady did not resist. She agreed, and said that if he was so comfortable, then of course she would gladly stay and would not go anywhere. The main thing was that the owner was happy with it. He asked her to close her eyes and say nice words to him until he stops her. He wants to hear what she thinks of him. It's for real. Even if the girl says something, it won't be the truth, just an attempt to please her. It's been over 15 minutes since he asked her to do so, not to upset him. The girl is still saying nice words to him. He thinks she's sincerely doing so, but in reality, every word is very hard for her to say. It's getting very hard to think of new words, and Zanaya can't stop. She's afraid of seeing an angry look or a request that will be even worse than this one. You can tell by his reaction he likes it a lot, but does the guy really think that for so long she had no problem saying all those words to him? And it was easy. He liked it so much that the king came up with a new tradition, or rather the first rule. He would come to her room every day. She would have to do everything the same as she was doing now. At one point, the king confesses that he is crazy about her voice. When he hears that beautiful sound, all he wants to do is enjoy the moment and make time stop. Actually, it's like some kind of ordeal. The person really doesn't realize that saying a few words or a compliment is one thing, but saying similar words for almost half an hour is overkill. Maybe the king is too narcissistic. He likes to be praised, complimented, and all that, but there has to be a limit to everything. How can he not see that all the time when Zinnia said those words, she didn't have enthusiasm in her eyes? As it usually happens when a person does it sincerely, she looks very tired and wants it to be over as soon as possible. After that, he repeated his favorite phrase again and said that he really wanted her to always remember that her master was him and that he would always be like that. Zinnia begins to hate this word, but unfortunately there is nothing to be done about it. She barely woke up because after such a thing, it was very hard to fall asleep, and her teacher is waiting for her. She immediately ran up to him and started apologizing and explained that she was so very late. She was very embarrassed and didn't want the first class to start with everyone being late and in a bad mood. In order to at least somehow remedy the situation, the girl said that she listened, that he has recently had some problems. The teacher has bad sleeping at night. He has not been able to sleep and rest normally for a week. So Zinnia offered her help. She says that she knows one remedy that can be tested. And that's not all. She's already got the gift in her hands. She's prepared for this conversation because she didn't want to upset him too much and she had to think of something. At first, the guy didn't understand anything and thought it was some kind of mistake, but at some point, it felt really good. He thought, "What's wrong with that?" or decided to say thanks. He realizes that the student was trying really hard and wanted to help. Plus, she talks like she really knows it will help. When she saw that the teacher was not so upset anymore, Zinnia was happy and said that it was very important for her to maintain a good relationship. And of course, she did not hide the fact that she started to perceive him as a friend or a person she could trust. At first, she thought she shouldn't have done it and even started to feel sorry. But the instructor came over and said that he had never had anything like this before. And he was really pleased that one of his female students was so attentive and caring. The guy accepted this gift and promised that tonight he would definitely test it. If he could have a good rest, he would consider Zinnia as his savior, because this problem had been tormenting him for a long time already. The student smiled and promised that she would never be late again. There had been an unforeseen situation yesterday that she had no way of solving. In this case, the teacher suggested canceling the class because today's topic was very similar to this conversation. He had to explain how important it is to remain a kind person, especially if someone feels bad, despite the fact that he taught to think only about himself. It is also important not to turn into a monster to whom it is impossible to turn for help. The point is that you really shouldn't count on any support here. But at the same time, if a person can do it, you shouldn't ignore the problem. Because if no one helps anyone, everyone will only get worse. Everything should be in moderation. For example, if someone really needs help and the person who can help will not be hurt by it and will not regret it, it is better to help, because if you refuse, the next time, no one will help them. Only refuse when the reputation of may be damaged, or for example, it will take up a lot of time that could be spent on getting benefits or doing important work. It's all a bit complicated, but if you attend every class, it becomes a habit. Some students don't notice how they have learned all these lessons and easily continue to live and learn in this kingdom. If you do everything right, there will be no problems. But if you think only about others, to the detriment of yourself, nothing good will come out of it. You need to maintain a certain balance. The guy still wonders how she manages to do it so that they do not even reach the office. And to continue the lessons does not make any sense, because the girl understands and learns everything faster than he thought. As soon as he started to praise her, some people heard it. Zinnia turned around and saw that some lady had heard their conversation, but judging by her reaction, she really didn't like that someone was praising Zinnia and that she was doing well at all. This woman is very dissatisfied, and all her anger she does not even hide. It is very interesting what will happen next, because at least Zinnia has already made one enemy. The girl tried not to pay attention to her. After all, she had done nothing wrong. And if this woman started to ruin her life, the lady would do everything possible to make her regret it and apologize. She's already managed to learn all the rules, plus, if she really struggles, she can always ask the king for help.